Welcome everyone back to the Pathways to Success podcast. In studio today, I have Lindsey Harrison. Good
This
to
is
see you.
exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited that we finally had a chance to
know.
carve out and meet up.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, I'm going to
Yeah.
take over just for a second.
Okay,
I want to
all right.
know, because when we first met,
Uh-huh.
this was an idea.
This was an idea. My trading
Okay.
company was an idea, right?
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
tell me where we are now and help me.
So this is weird. All right, so you and I actually met towards the end of 2017.
Yep.
I think the email date was December 2017. And at the time, I had this idea of structuring a training and development company
Yep.
because of this amazing network I built through the podcast and leveraging and creating corporate training solutions, leveraging the knowledge, resources, and connections I've had on the podcast, right? So they were really around these 4 pillars of sales, leadership, career development, and also wellness. And I went out and trying to sell that, and I landed 2 very big meetings,
Yep.
and I got lots of pats on the back and said this is a great revolutionary idea, but no one bought, right?
Okay.
So as I mentioned to you earlier,
Yes.
I went back to my mentors and they're like, Julian, you need to focus. So I decided to focus on one particular vertical, which is the vertical I come from, recruiting and staffing, and one training that not anyone else was administering but myself. Because to build this, I need to understand the business. The brand really is about me at this point. And I got my first 2 clients, which is pretty crazy.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Lindsey, I changed when I sold this idea that didn't exist before. And for the most part, my whole career has been a W-2 guy, right? So I show up and then someone pays me. But here it was company pays you and then you render service. And honestly, that day I changed.
I love it. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Does that help kind of catch
Yes,
us up?
I love it.
And it's now, okay, awesome. Well, so Lindsey. All right.
Has that happened before?
It hasn't.
Did
You kind
someone
of threw
flip the
me off
script
a
on
little
you?
bit.
A little
Yeah.
bit?
All
Okay,
right.
okay.
So just to kind of introduce you to our audience here, so we know a
Sure.
little bit more about you. Tell us more about your company and what you guys kind of specialize in.
Sure. So I own a company called the Crowd Agency. We are a fractional marketing agency, and the way that works is we come into companies and we either take over the entirety of what it is that they need,
Yeah.
or there's some companies that they already have a person that does their website,
Yeah.
or they have a social media guy, or they might even have a CMO at this point, but they don't have the capacity or the know-how of everything it is that we do. So we'll come in and become their best friends. We work in 8 different sectors of marketing, and that's anything from strategy, so that could be personal brand, that could be B2B companies, that can be B2C companies, and kind of anything in between. We do anything that happens online, so anything digital, any type of creative when it comes to online websites, if you're doing any geofencing, geo-targeting, any of those types of ads. We have a big event section of our company, so we will throw events for companies, large, really, really large, really tiny ones. We have an influencer side of things, so that kind of was an interesting start for us.
Yeah.
And so the influencer puzzle piece that we had a lot of brands that were coming to us saying that this influencer marketing with micro and macro influencers was becoming larger, as you
Yeah.
probably know.
Right.
And that they wanted us to start facilitating conversations for them. So we kind of are the middleman between them and the influencers,
Sure.
and let them know what it is that they need to be talking about, make sure that payments are happening, those different types of things. And now we have a lot of influencers that have seen what we're doing, and like my agency, everything's a little different than most companies, so they see why we're a little different, and now
Yeah.
have come to us saying, hey, can you actually be our agent and find us companies to work with? So
Interesting.
that's been the newest puzzle piece, and it's been going. But
Yeah.
so we're kind of all across the board with things. We're industry agnostic. We have 3 different industries that we don't particularly work in, and that's retail, that's restaurants, and that's attorneys. But other than that, we're rocking and rolling. It's good.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I think it's really interesting that you're into the influencer piece, and essentially the reason why they have become influencers is because they've established a very strong personal brand. And quite frankly, this is a very ubiquitous topic nowadays, but I was hoping to unpack a lot of your thought leadership in terms of having marketed for companies and now dealing with influencers. But why do you think it's important for individuals to start building a personal brand?
Well, I think that that's the way that everything's going. Whether that is you're trying to be an influencer or whether it's even in the corporate world. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y, all of these groups of people, it's no longer we're going into a company and we're staying there for 35 years. And then we're retiring with them. It's we're going from company to company and what looks like a better situation for us or what's better for our family or we want to travel or we want more freedom. But at the same point, in order to be able to do that, you have to be building that personal brand and you have to be doing that within the niche of the organization that you're in. So I was listening to a speaker at one point and they said, it really doesn't matter what company it is that you work for, but if you are constantly marketing yourself, if you're constantly making yourself different, if you're constantly making connections within specific industries or silos of industries, then you'll always have a position. And I think that you differentiating yourself based on those things will ultimately be the way that the jobs work moving forward. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. So to start with like a baseline of definitions, like how would you define what a personal brand is?
That's a good question. I would say that a personal brand is what are you passionate about? What makes you different? It's just like a corporate brand, right? So you go out and you see Southwest Airlines. Why are they different? What makes them a different niche within the current industry? And for them, they usually are less expensive. You go in and you don't actually have a spot to sit and you're in specific lines, and they have streamlined things where they have one specific jet, they have one specific way of doing this, and they have figured out their process. And so they've differentiated themselves based on that. And personal brands are the exact same way. What makes you different? What makes somebody want to listen to you? And it really doesn't matter what niche it is that you're in, as long as there's a following that wants to be part of that as well. So for you, for instance, you are starting this niche of what makes you different within the corporate recruiting, business development, making people better within this world, and what makes you different. And that's where I start specifically even with companies of going, what is your mission statement? What are your core values? And make sure that you're following everything based on those.
I love it. And I think you're kind of leading into sort of where I was thinking. So like, are you familiar with the term minimal viable product, like in terms of software development, right? So what would be the equivalent of an MVP for a personal brand? You know what I mean? Like, what are those core elements to first establish before you can say, hey, this is my brand?
Yeah, so I think that that's across the board going to be really different. There are a lot of exercises that you can do specifically to figure out what those things are. And again, what I tell companies and now people is, what makes you unique and what are your values? And what I tell people to do is, and we do this in strategy sessions with corporations as well, is whiteboard it out, right? And so what I do with corporations is I say, pick out 5 of your, if you could take these people and you could clone them, who is that person? So you're with leadership, right? And they tell you that. And what are all the characteristics of those people? Right? And so we write all of those down.
Interesting.
Okay? So then at that point, we really start going into it and going, okay, let's figure out the 3 to 7 of them that really personify our company brand and our company culture. And so a person can do the exact same thing, right? So they can say, okay, I really, really like the way that my mother does things, or my mentor does this, and if I could clone that, and if I could personify that and have that as my personal brand, what would those keywords be? And then at that point, you can start crossing them off, you can start putting some of them together, you can start circling other ones, and then that starts to become you, and that becomes your brand. And make sure that they are aligned with who you are, right, and who you want to be, and then that's what you start putting out into the universe to start telling people, this is who I am and this is what I want to do.
Interesting. So it really does feel like an identity exercise.
Sure.
Just your values, like what exactly is it that you're passionate about? What do you stand for? and what kind of makes you different. That's a very interesting exercise that you mentioned. So what would be kind of like that next step then? After you have, let's say, that core set of values and kind of like a fuzzy mission statement, I guess, like what would be the next step in developing that brand?
So then you start with your marketing, right? So where do you want to go?
Yeah.
And how do you want to get there? So the next steps that I do with companies is I say, okay, so what is our pie in the sky plan?
Yeah.
Right? So let's think 10 years from now. So I had a lady that I talked to the other day, and she was telling me, these are all the different types of things that I want to do in 10 years, and I'm going to go to space. And I said, what?
Could I throw that in there?
She goes, this is completely outside of it, but I want to make sure that that's part of it as well. So these can be complete pie in the sky types of things, but they are things that you are wanting to make sure that you're doing with your brand. So for you, for instance, I want to have 500 speaking engagements in a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be aggressive, but that's okay. That's something that you want to do. And so then we take that and we start really actually putting numbers to those. So this is where the analytics get really excited, right? And so you say, okay, this is what it is that I want to do, and what does that look like? So for my company statement, it's I want to be at this amount of money. I want to have this many people that are working with me, and I want to be out of the business. Okay, so I don't want to be running the day-to-day sides of things. And so that's our 10-year goal. Then we go down into 3-year goals and 1-year goals. Okay, and it's the exact same thing with personal brands. So at 10 years, I want to be doing this. I want to have this many followers. I want to be doing this many podcasts. I want to be doing X, Y, Z. I don't know what those are. Then you break those down into 3 years. Where do I need to be there? Where do I need to be in 1 year? And then you start bringing them down into 90-day goals. Okay. So if you look at that, if you start going, oh my gosh, this 10-year looks astronomical to me, but we've already done all of the work. We already understand what our core values are. We understand what our mission statement is, and we have a marketing idea of how we're going to get there. Now we have 90-day goals to get us there. And before you know it, you're there.
So just for some additional definitions, like how would you separate a personal brand from marketing, and how do they work together?
Well, I think that it's all of the same, right? So you have your personal brand. How are you going to get there? So marketing is the engine of how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. So whether that means that you are a macro influencer right now or a micro influencer right now, and you want to be a macro influencer, what brands are you going to align yourself with so you can make sure that you are getting more followers? What people are you going to align yourself for the exact same thing? What events are you going to be going to? What people are you going to be bringing on your podcast? Who are you going to be pitching to get speaking engagements? What do those different types of things look like? And do all of those fall back within your core values? And if they don't, then you don't do those.
So how do you start to define what are the most effective mechanisms of marketing once you have your brand and you have your goals?
Ooh.
Is that a can of worms or?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so marketing is all over the place, right? So you have old school marketing where it's going to be your billboards, it's going to be your print marketing, it's going to be any type of flyers, maybe it's mail, those different types of things. So those are going to be kind of your old school types of things. You have your new school types of things where it's going to be anything that has to do with online, any of the retargeting that has to happen online. So when you go to a website and then that website or that product that you've been looking at is now following you everywhere, right? So there are those different types of techniques. There are speaking techniques. There are, so those kind of fall into this category. What I like to do with companies and with brands is I like to merge the two of them, right? So here, I'll give you an example. If somebody comes to a client of mine and they go to their website, at that point, I can figure out where it is that their home address is from the cookies and the tracking and those different types of things. So I can find that information out. So now, what happens if a postcard goes to them saying, hey, it was great to see you on the website. If there's anything that we can do, please let us know, right? Or instead of a postcard, what if it's a handwritten note, right? And so now some people are going, oh, that's a little creepy. But others are going, okay, they're seeing that I'm doing this. They're bringing this part into it. And now I'm starting a relationship with this brand or with this person. And I think that for me and what's made us pretty successful is being able to merge the two of them. when it comes to a personal brand, you're going to have to figure out, again, what is the best ROI for you. And your return on investment, again, might be followers. It might be people that are coming to your podcast. It might be, I don't know what those things are, but where do we need to go? How are we going to get there based on what our ROI is? And then let's start testing different things out. And I usually tell people, you kind of have an idea of this is what people have done. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel in the beginning. Let's figure out what's working. Let's figure out what's not working. And then the things that are working, we'll continue to make those better.
Got it. So with the very successful influencers that you're currently working with, I'm curious, are you seeing commonalities of what they have done to make them so successful?
I think that the common thing is they are tirelessly doing it.
Yeah.
So they're doing it all day, every day, and they think about it at all times, right? So you think about the people that are even successful in business, and this is business as well as your personal brand, is they eat, they breathe, they drink what it is that they're doing.
Right.
And every person that they speak to, every event that they go to, everything that they're doing at night and on the weekends, it's all about making themselves better, or making their brand better, or making their company better. And I think that that's probably the biggest commonality. I mean, we have people that love to cook, and so they do that side of things. We have housewives from Bravo, right? So they have their specific niche of that. We have business leaders and thought leaders as well that are influencers, and there's not really any commonality when it comes to who they are, what it is that they're doing, except for the fact that they're doing it all the time.
All the time.
Constantly.
Yeah. When I think of influencer, I think of someone who is kind of a creator, a content creator, right? Whether it's Instagram or YouTube or Twitter or wherever, right? So how do you know if that's the right sort of, would you call that marketing strategy for you? Yeah, how do you know if that's the right thing for you?
Well, I think that it has to be the right thing for you.
So that's just a common thing across the board. Everyone needs to be a kind of a publisher of some sort.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so that has to be out there.
Yeah.
Social media is a powerful tool if you know how to use it correctly, but it's also a necessary evil when it comes to business and personal brands. I don't know actually how you would be a personal brand without using social media.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But
that's so true.
Yeah.
It needs to live somewhere.
Right.
And that's what I've experienced. Like what I mentioned to you earlier is that I didn't know I was building a personal brand, but it was through that content creation the brand sort of emerged. And honestly, it's like a body of work that I could point to. It's a way for people to get to know me without even meeting me.
Yep.
And I've seen the real equity that creates. It opens doors because I'm not like like if I make a cold call, I'm like, hey, I'm Julian, julianplacino.com, then they can see the 200 hours of long form interview and get to know me, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think you made a point that just clicked in my head, is the importance of a social footprint, because that is in essence sort of the manifestation of your brand.
Well, sure, but think about it. So when somebody finds out about you, and you just talked about it, right? So they find out about you, what's the first thing that they do?
They'll Google me.
They'll Google you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to have some sort of presence online, right? So whether that is your website, right? So they're going to want to know kind of what's happening here. And most people, that's kind of a dime a dozen, right? I mean, here it is, and you've put all of that information out there. So, okay, great. So the second thing that they do is they usually go to social media.
Social media,
right?
right?
So they're going to figure out what's the behind the scenes about you. So your website is, this is what I'm putting out there, this is who I am, this is my corporate image, if you like. Your social media should be behind the scenes action of who you are truly. And then the next thing, and you're not probably going to have this, maybe you will with your speaking, are your reviews, right? So now these are other people that are speaking about you. And whether that's on LinkedIn and you have people that are endorsing you or giving you reviews on LinkedIn, whether that's on Facebook, whether that's on Yelp, whatever those different types of things are, if you have those three, that's just where people go now.
Yeah. I love it. So let's say someone has kind of the core of the brand, has some goals, definitely knows they want to be a creator of some sorts, and you have to start sharing your thought leadership. I think that's absolutely critical, right? So a common question that I get is that, so what should I start creating? What is your response to that?
Well, that is your specific niche, right? So what are you good at? That's where your core values come back, right? And so it's, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is how I do it. And I do it in a creative way. So now you are marketing yourself, just like a business is marketing, just like Southwest Airlines is marketing themselves. What makes them different, and why do people need to listen to them? And that's what each influencer needs to figure that out, right? And that's a lot of soul searching. That's a lot of, looking at it, and again, not recreating the wheel, or maybe sometimes even recreating the wheel, but seeing that wheel and going, how can I make this better, and what's going to be entertaining for my specific audience? And the content creation is going to be the never-ending thing for personal brands as well as business.
So for someone starting out, right, like I think it's important for the consistency piece. Like, do you have any rules of thumb in terms of a release schedule? Like how often someone should create something? Like in the beginning, you don't want to get overwhelmed, but at the same time, you want to do something that's sustainable. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Sure. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to personal branding, when it comes to any of those things, you have to be honest with yourself, right? And so and when I tell clients this as well, you're completely correct. I had a client that came to me the other day, and they do tons of influencer marketing, and they have tons and tons of content. They were on Radio Row the other week. They're at NASCAR this week. I mean, they have just tons of great stuff for us to use. However, it is tiring to continue to come up with content, right? And there are great things that are out there now that you can start planning those out for you. But you have to be completely consistent with that. So if it's consistency of being there 1 time a week, which that's a little less, but 1 time a week, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 5 times a day, you just have to make sure that that's consistent. So that's more of a personal thing of going, okay, can I genuinely do this? Do I have enough content in my head, or am I doing enough cool things that are out there that people want to see? Because then there's a fine line of producing things that people actually want to see and producing things just to produce things. And so if you think that you can post 5 times a day, I would suggest starting slow of going, okay, well, maybe let's start with 2 times a day and actually see if you can do that, and then start getting more and more.
How do you choose which social platform is right for your style of content creation?
Demographic, right? That's an easy question. So who is it that you're going after? Why are you going after them? And then look at the specific demographics. So Snapchat is going to be a lot younger demographic than, say, Facebook is going to be. And all of them have their different niches. And so who has the most engagement? I also would use, Facebook has a less than 1% engagement rate at this point.
Less than 1% engagement?
Less than 1%.
And how do you define engagement? Like a like or a comment?
So actually people even being able to see the post.
Yeah.
So
they disappear quick.
Yeah. So, you could post things all day long, and if I'm following you, I'm only going to see your stuff 1% of the time, right? So then you need to start thinking about that as well. So what platforms are, while they're always changing, but when you're starting to decide those things, what platforms are going to allow you to get to your audience the easiest without more money, right? So if you want more of your followers to be able to see the content that you are posting on Facebook, you have to pay to play. All of them are at that model, but who's better than that based on your demographic? You need to figure those things out.
If you were looking to appeal to primarily a corporate professional audience, where would you go?
LinkedIn.
Okay, let's go here. What has been your experience with LinkedIn? I'm curious, compared to other social platforms.
So LinkedIn isn't as viral, in my opinion.
It's not?
No, in my opinion, I don't think that it's as viral.
Okay.
I do think that it is more expensive.
Okay, so you're coming at it from a paid perspective.
From a paid side of it.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is way more targeted. So again, that's your ROI side of things, right?
Yeah.
So in Facebook, it can be 1 cent to be able to get to somebody, or half a cent to be able to get to somebody. On LinkedIn, it's maybe $10 or $15 to get to somebody. However, that person is the exact person that you need to get to.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn is an interesting platform specifically for businesses, and now we have a lot of businesses that have come to us and said, okay, well, our CEO has quite a few thousand people on LinkedIn. How do we utilize that? And so now we're utilizing it not just in business with their business pages or their business groups, but we're also using it in their personal side of it too.
So when you're helping companies, typically when it comes to the marketing piece, is it always associated with a spend, or do you kind of coach them through organic posts?
Sure. Organic posts definitely have to be there.
Yeah.
However, in my experience, there are so many other things that you can be doing other than social media when it comes to a company that have better ROI for whatever it is that you're looking to do. So most companies that we have, again, unless they're in retail, restaurants are going to be something that's really important when it comes to social media. But I have an architect firm, right? So an architect firm, they're probably not going to find their typical audience on Facebook. It's a necessary evil, again, so there's content that's created there that's something of behind the scenes, and if somebody or their potential developer is looking them up, then they can see what their company is. Here's their company footprint. But for them, going to trade shows is more important.
Right.
Doing continuing education with their specific clients, having one-on-one meetings, those different types of things are more important. So I digress a little bit from the question that you're asking, but that's where I guess my company comes into a lot of value, is the fact that we don't just sell a widget.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to just sell a company Facebook, or I'm not going to sell a company, you need a website because of XYZ, or you have to go to trade shows because that's the only thing that I do.
Yeah.
We really look at it a holistic approach and go, what is the best for this specific brand or personal brand that we're looking into? And so it might not be for you even going and doing LinkedIn. Organic is great, and then you got to go, okay, well, am I going to spend money on making that more viral, if you like, or am I going to spend my money in going to a trade show where I know that my customers are going to be, or doing my one-on-ones and doing more of the sweat equity when it comes to your business.
So it really sounds like you really have to take ownership, because all these things are just channels.
Yeah.
But you need to know where your customers are, who you are, the best way to kind of reach them. And it's a lot of testing and just really knowing your business.
Yep.
Love it. Makes sense. Any common mistakes that you have seen when it comes to developing a personal brand or marketing or anything like that?
Sure. I think that the biggest misconception is that companies and brands and people think that they can go through exercises. They can start off their marketing strategy, or start off their branding, or start off their values, and then it's supposed to run on autopilot.
Yeah.
So I have companies that will come to us and say, well, our Google AdWords did so well for us 8 years ago. Why don't they do well for us now? And I say, well, what have you been doing? Well, nothing. It was set up 8 years ago. Okay, well, that's a problem.
That's a problem,
right?
Yeah. Right,
So it doesn't run on autopilot. And that's where I think that a lot of people get in trouble, is the fact of they've created this persona of who they are, they've created this brand of who the company is, and they've done the legwork in the beginning, but they're not being consistent with it. And what I find in business, as well as what I find in personal branding and influencers, is the fact that you have to be doing it day in and day out, over and over and over again. And sometimes that's sexy, and sometimes it's really not, and it's mundane, and it's just, ugh. But that's the snail wins the race, or what do they say?
Tortoise in the hare.
The tortoise in the hare. There you
Slow
go.
and steady wins the race.
There you go.
Yeah.
The snail.
Right.
I'm starting that.
Got it. All right. Well, Lindsey, I mean, this was a lot of information that we unpacked in a short amount of time. Is there anything else that you think our listeners listeners and viewers should know about personal branding and marketing that you could close this out with?
Well, again, I would just say that being consistent is the best way to win the race. I think that knowing your core values, and then honestly being okay with firing clients or saying no to specific things because they don't fall within your core values, is something that is really important, especially in this day and age where there are sharks out there, right? And you can get into that, and then you can all of a sudden find yourself in something that you might not want to be in, or values that you don't have. And so making sure that you're true to yourself, making sure that the content that you're creating is consistent and it's great content, and you're not just producing it because you're supposed to produce it. And being consistent to your values, I think, is the best thing to do, whether that's in business, whether that's in personal branding, or whether that's in just your personal life.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Lindsey, how do people connect with you, follow you, work with you? If you would, tell us all this.
We are the It Crowd Agency. It's www.itcrowdmarketing.com. You can find us there, find all about us there, and see our different social channels, and get a hold of us. We'd love to talk.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to have all this information here in the show notes as well. So Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks
I love
again.
having you on.
Thanks again. Next time, we'll whiteboard everything for you.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. An
Let's do
interactive
it.
session. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. I'd
for
love
sure.
that. Yeah, that's actually how, Andrew kind of did something like that similar with me as well.
Let's do
kind
it.
of consulting me, so that'd be great. And everyone, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success podcast. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pathways to Success.